introduce you to the next speaker, and it is also a very rare opportunity for us to bring in Philip Sim, who's a senior lecturer, and he's put it aside some time just to be here with us. He's got a very unique career journey. I won't steal his thunder, but basically we have Philip here who specializes in strategic communication in difficult situations, especially with challenging audiences using both traditional media and social media. And in fact, he has dealt with communications during various crises and elections that has hit Singapore. So his skills stack actually come mostly from 20 years in government service, including serving the Prime Minister's office and Ministry of Communications and Information, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Health, and he has become an educator to share, over the past few years, looking to share his knowledge with a broader audience. He firmly believes that understanding how to communicate better with one's audience will help those who know how to lead a more successful life. All right, fantastic. And today, Philip is going to share with us how does anyone without experience get the job that needs it. So, Philip, I'm gonna just stop share.
Yes, thank you.
Hand the floor to you.
Yeah, it's okay. Let me just share my presentation. Okay, are you able to see it?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, yeah, actually, just before I begin, let me just say that actually I identified quite a bit with quite a few points that Samuel actually raised, and I could actually identify with it because my wife used to be a superintendent of a welfare home. Right, so she just left the role earlier this year. So talking about coincidence, and yes, it is a very meaningful. Very meaningful field. That you can really see the kind of impact that you actually make in other people's life, which is not something that I can say with other sectors. Okay, without much ado, let me just start to introduce myself. How should I actually introduce myself? Okay. I suppose one of the ways I can introduce myself is to discuss some of the places that I've actually worked in. As Eileen has actually mentioned just now, I have worked for almost 17, 18 years in government service in one role or another. I started out all the way back in 1999. You can calculate how old I am from that. And I worked in the Ministry of Defense. And it was actually a very challenging role, but it was also a role in which I actually learned quite a lot. And it was because of the work that I did in the Ministry of Defense that actually I was posted to the Prime Minister's office, where actually, I shall share more of what I did previously, but where I was actually posted to the Prime Minister's office to actually continue that role. And from there, I moved on to the Ministry of Transport, where I was the Assistant Director of Aviation Division, where we look at aviation industry issues. Then I moved on to the Ministry of Communications and Information. That's when one of my former bosses actually pulled me over. She went over to MCI, so she became a director, and she asked whether I could actually go over and help her. I shall explain more about the kind of role that I played there later. From there, I went on to the Ministry of Health. I was seconded there for 3 years, almost 3.5 years, before I finally went back to the Ministry of Communications and Information. And from there, my most recent role is as a senior lecturer with Republic Polytechnic. I'm sure a lot of you are already starting to wonder why this big change, why the sudden change from being a government servant all this while, and suddenly I decided to move on to the education sector. Now I'll explain more about this later as we go along. Okay, you can actually think about my career with the government as a whole series of crises. Okay. You all recognize what this is about. I'm sure all of you will recognize it. This was September 11th. That was very early in my MINDEF career, my Ministry of Defense career. Okay, I still remember the kind of shock that we had when this happened. And it was one of those events that radically forces the organization, and in this case, forces the government to rethink fundamental concepts. And in this case, the fundamental concept is security. We no longer confront the traditional kind of security challenges that we face. Previously, it was like internal security or external security. External security, that's against another country that might actually come and attack us. Internal security, maybe like terrorists plant a bomb in some place and all that. But when it comes to this new kind of terrorism, we're suddenly confronted with a new type of terrorism known as catastrophic terrorism, where the impact is out of all proportions. There were it can cause huge number of casualties. For example, the attack on the World Trade Center, it caused up to almost 2,000 casualties. So it caused a severe economic impact. And so that was some of the issues that we started to look at. And some of the issues that we look at was, for example, the security of our critical infrastructure. This is an example of what some of the measures that we put in place in Jurong Island, because Jurong Island is one of our strategic assets where we actually locate a lot of our strategic issues. And I was actually posted over to the Prime Minister's office. There was this office known as the National Security Coordination Secretariat. If you haven't heard of it, don't worry about it, because a lot of people are not aware that actually such an outfit exists. But when you look at all these issues, it actually cuts across the different ministries, cut across the different domains. So in this case, we try to help to coordinate between the external security part and the internal security part so that we can have a holistic view. Okay, so Jurong Island was one of the first issues I looked at when I was Assistant Director of Strategic Planning. Okay, as we move along, okay, further a bit into the career, there was a different kind of terrorist attack. I don't know if you remember, this is the 7/7 terrorist attack in London, 2005. The targets were public transport, the public transport sector. And this was when we realized that actually the public transport constitutes a huge, gigantic soft target, which can actually cause a lot. If terrorists were to attack it, it could actually cause huge numbers of casualties as well. So that was when we actually started to look at some of the issues that we can, some of the measures that we can put in place to actually harden this soft target, so to speak. And the number of ministries and agencies that were involved in just this particular issue was actually quite a few. Right? So that was when we started to think in terms of measures such as, for example, having the transport police on our public train. That's where the idea all originated from. Okay, so moving on. Okay, by this time, okay, I don't know if you recognize this. This one I think is a bit less well known. This was the Fukushima power station. Okay, long story short, in March 2011, Japan suffered this major earthquake, which led to a huge tsunami. The tsunami actually hit the coast of Fukushima, where this nuclear power station happened to be located. So what happened was the backup power supply was cut off. And even though they scrammed the reactor, what happened was the coolant system was actually knocked out. And the whole system, the reactor, was threatened to actually melt down. Now, what has it got to do with Singapore? Now, the thing is that what happened was people were worried that radiation will leak out from power station, it will float up into the air, you fly over to Singapore, it rains, the radiation particle comes down, people start glowing in the dark, and then they die. Okay, so there were actually quite a lot of interesting issues associated with that. People were not only worried about radioactive particles raining down on us, they worry about radioactive particles in Japanese lipsticks. They worry about planes flying over Japan. They come back to Singapore, they are still radioactive, they start to infect everyone around them, and people start growing in the dark, and then after that they die. Okay, so I was actually helping to coordinate the whole of government crisis communication at that point in time. It was very challenging, but also very, very interesting. Okay, this was the severe haze crisis, in case you guys don't remember. It was back in 2013. Okay, it was a very interesting bit of time as well. One of the days, a couple of days, the 1 hour PSI index actually hit almost 400. So people were actually panicking. And we actually had to put in place whole government crisis communication to actually help to manage people's fears. And so I still remember this very well because I was actually almost camped out for quite a few days at the Ministry of Environment, trying to advise them about what people are worried about, what people are saying, what we need to say, what we need to do in terms of public communications to try to help to reassure people. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is a bit less well known. This was the Ebola outbreak in 2014. By then, I was actually in the Ministry of Health. So what was our role in there during that time was that people were worried that Ebola patients would take the plane, the commercial airliner out from the Congo area, and they will start to spread the disease around. Okay, so there was actually a great fear during that period of time. So in Singapore, we were actually also had that fear because we were one of the major air hubs. I still remember there was one case in which there was this Nigerian lady who came to Singapore, and she was down. I can't quite remember. I think she was down with the flu, and then she went to Glen Eagles, right? Okay, so Nigerian lady, very distinctive ethnic dress, went to Glen Eagles, and someone saw her there. They think about Africa, and then suddenly they think, oh, could she have Ebola? And suddenly people were starting to, there were a lot of speculations on the social media all of a sudden. So it was very challenging time. So we had to handle the public concerns about that disease outbreak. Okay, this is 2015. That will be MERS-CoV outbreak. I was still in Ministry of Health. That's another one of the disease outbreak I had to deal with. So that was actually pretty much a lot of what we deal with during that point in time, the frequent disease outbreaks around the world that we actually have to handle. And also things like, for example, explaining and publicizing government policies such as, for example, MediShield Life. So it was a very interesting and educating experience during that period. Okay, so that was some of the roles that I actually played. You can actually see what I've done in terms of the elections. So other than crisis, I was actually very involved in quite a few of the elections as well. So this was back in 2011. It was a really long time ago. Pritam Singh was really a young, I wouldn't say he was novice, but he was actually quite young and quite new to the party. Okay, so that was 2011, and it was quite a earthquake moment in Singapore politics because that was the very first time an opposition party managed to win a group representative constituency in Singapore. I remember it very well because I was actually in the same room when the results were actually announced by the Chief Returning Officer, Mr. Yamami. I don't know if you guys remember him. Very entertaining fellow, very nice fellow.
Yes.
Okay, we have a good time with him. All right. Okay, I was also involved in the 2011 presidential election. Again, I was seconded to the elections department to help to handle the public communications. And I also have a bit of story to share about it. On the night, it was actually a recount because results were very, very close, less than 2%. So what happened was a huge crowd was actually gathered outside the election department waiting for the results to be announced. And there was this policeman who actually came up to me, little me, and said, "Can you tell the crowd to move away from the gates?" And I was thinking, what, me? What can I do? But they were very nice about it. The crowd was very nice about it. Once we explained to them why it is important to keep the way clear and things like that, yeah, okay, they move out of the way and all that. But it was a very, very interesting experience. Okay, this was the outcome by-election. I was involved in the for that, and that was the Punggol East by-election. So actually, I was involved in quite a few of these elections. And more recently, I was actually involved in the general election for 2020. Okay, just a few months ago, but in a slightly different role. I will explain more about it later. Okay, now the question is, given my long and extensive experience with the government, why did I actually move? Why did I choose to actually move away from what I was doing to where I am now? Okay, I think this is the answer. These pictures will actually have given you the answer already. And I think it's something that a lot of us can actually identify with. At the end of the day, I think my family was one of the major motivating factors for me to actually to seek a change. Because I think once you reach a certain seniority level, a lot is actually expected of you. I still remember when I became deputy director, they issued me with an iPad. I was thinking, wow, great, man, an iPad. So now I can check my email whenever I go. Then I realized, oh no, now I can check my email whenever I go. Okay, so the thing is that now you're expected to actually respond quickly to anything and everything, you know. And I always remember I sent my son for therapy. I mean, I sent him for tuition and was sitting to one side, and I was actually crafting emails on my iPad and all that. So then I was thinking, is this really what I want to do? Is this really the way I want to live? And that was when I actually started to think through what I really, really want to do in life. I think that was a point of inflection that Samuel actually pointed to just now.
Yeah.
I think I can really, really totally identify with that. I said that, you know, it took place when I was around 45. So I really had to do some hard thinking. Okay, so before I go on further, Eileen,
Yep.
perhaps I stop sharing for the moment.
Yes. Yes. Please stop share. And then what we will do is, hang on. Yep. So everybody, please, same code. I've just initiated the second question. All right. Let me just show the screen. Let me just show everybody what we are seeing here. All right. Can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, what do you guys think? What are some of the major challenges that you guys face when you think about changing career? Is there something that's holding you back, something you're afraid of, you know, something that you're concerned about?
Yeah.
What are some of these challenges?
Yeah. What are the challenges? So,
Yes, okay. Okay, okay.
wow. There's a few, right?
I feel, but I can see the general classification there already.
There seem to be a lot of the same category, right?
Variation of the theme.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, comfort zone. Okay.
Financial commitment, there's quite a lot there. Getting the same salary. Yep. Not
Okay.
meeting financial commitment.
Comfort zone. Yeah.
Comfort zone, yes. Uncertainty, not meeting the requirements. Age bias. I
Okay, that's
spotted that.
interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I can stop share and then you can.
I think I can take it from here.
Yes. I'm not stopping this one. So guys, you can still
can
continue
just
to
carry
put
on.
in. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to your presentation.
Presentation.
I can see that. Very good.
Okay. Okay. Surprise, surprise. Okay, these are the challenges I face. Surprise, surprise. I think there were some common themes there, right? Okay. I divided into these 4 issues: confidence, cash, competence, and communication. Okay, I shall go through them one by one. Okay. I think in terms of confidence, when I was going to, because you got to understand, I was in the government for almost 16, 17 years. Okay, all my work, networks, all the people that I know, the people I was friends with, they're all civil servants or government servants or in one form or another and all that. So it's actually quite intimidating thought to actually try to think about stepping out of the box, getting out from the area, from what I've been doing. Okay, so it's just the thought of doing something different, something unfamiliar with. That in itself is actually quite a psychological challenge for me. That was actually confronted with. There was really, really a lot of self-doubt when I was actually thinking about stepping out. Another thought that I have is that why should people want me? Okay, and one of the key challenge that I thought I would be confronted with is what would someone want to hire someone with only government sector experience, who have been almost spent his entire career in government and all that. So why would someone want me? Okay, that was actually a genuine fear. And I always in the back of my mind, there was this thought that I would definitely be rejected because I'm too highly paid. People will be scared. Okay. Oh, I don't have marketing experience. People will that's what people will be looking for in the private sector. Oh, I'll be rejected because XYZ. There was 101 reasons. Okay. Sometimes the really amazing thing is that the way your mind will just keep talking to you. Your own mind is actually sabotaging yourself because you keep thinking of all the negative thoughts and all that, and it's very, very real. Okay, cash. I think just now we saw quite a few of the challenges that people talk about. They talk about pay, they talk about financial responsibility and all that. That is actually also very, very real, and that is something that actually I also think about a lot of. Money factor. Okay, I won't say that I'm really, really very, very well paid, but certainly I was actually quite comfortably off. And I was actually quite fearful that I will not be able to meet my financial commitments if I were to move to a low paying job or if I move out from this sector. Okay, government sector, I might be quite well paid because I have a certain seniority level. After all, I've been there for 17 years, 18 years. I worked myself up to become a deputy director, so I'm quite well paid. But what would happen if I move to a lower paying job? So that was actually quite a bit of fear as well. Okay, so ultimately at the end of the day, what I'm actually worried about was the savings, the investments, because I'm not just thinking in terms of how I can meet my immediate financial commitment, although that's important too, but actually how can I save? How can I actually make enough, put in enough investment to ensure that actually I have a comfortable retirement, to ensure that I can provide for my child. So those are real fears that actually I have. And at the end of the day, if I were to be honest with myself, I think one of the big questions I keep asking myself is lifestyle related. Trying to give up on the lifestyle that I have. Okay. And I actually, I was like, my last job before I left the government, I was actually working in the city, and then right in the middle of town. Don't know if you all remember the building, building with a lot of colors, opposite Funan Center.
Yes.
Okay, the old Hill Street Police Station.
Yep.
Okay, that was where I was working. Okay, and the thing was, lunch. The food there around the area was very expensive.
Clarke
And
Quay,
I thought nothing about paying $10, $20 for lunch and all that. Okay. Could I actually change my lifestyle? So that was actually another question that I had. Okay. In terms of skill set, in terms of competence, okay, I'm worried that I don't have the skills that people are looking for. Okay. I'm worried that actually I don't have the experience even if I have the skills. Remember what I mentioned just now about, moving from the government sector to actually the private sector and all that? Do I actually have the experience, for example, that's relevant to the private sector? For example, in terms of sales and all that. You might argue that, for example, I've been doing strategic communications, I've been doing public communications since forever for the government, but can I translate it into a different sector, a different industry? Okay, so that was what I'm concerned about as well. And finally, in terms of the context, will I be able to convince people that I can actually apply the skills and the experience I have to a new context, to a different context? Okay. So as you can see, there were actually quite a few concerns I have. Okay. By end of the day, I recognize that actually one of the issues that I really need to understand, I really need to work on was actually how to communicate my worth. Okay, in terms of competencies, in terms of my character, and in terms of my commitment. As I was going about looking for a job, it took me a while to figure quite a few of this out. And I did apply for quite a few jobs and went for quite a few interviews. Uh, I got rejected for a few, okay, but what I realized was each of them actually taught me something. Each of them taught me how to actually communicate my worth better. So every time I get rejected, I try to figure out what happened, what I can do better. Okay. In this case, I realized that I really need to break down my communications about my worth into these three areas in terms of competencies, character, and commitment. Now, this is my pathway. Okay, that's my son. Okay. I always like to use pictures of my son, but that's my son. In terms of competencies, I think in terms of communicating my work, I think we need to start thinking in terms of how we can actually do better when it comes to competence. How do I actually build up my confidence? I realized that one of the most important things that we need to do is to actually just do it, just step out of our comfort zone. Okay. And one of the things that we can start by doing is just do what is difficult. Challenge yourself. Do what is difficult. Okay. Especially what is psychologically difficult. If I find it difficult to actually apply for a job, to just send in the resume, to send in the cover letter, just do it. Okay. If I find it difficult to ask people for recommendations, okay, there's this psychological barrier, this lack of confidence and all that. The best way to overcome it is just to do it. In everything that we do, try to take small steps. If we think it's really difficult to, for example, just come up with a whole new resume that actually covers your entire career that actually tells people about all these 20 years of experience that you have, okay, start by just doing a little bit. Okay, start by maybe just having the broad categories. Okay, and every day you just do a bit, work through it, and before you know it, okay, within a week, within a month, you might actually have a very comprehensive resume, so to speak. Okay, in fact, Eileen has really helped me with that as well. I worked through my LinkedIn account. It was actually quite a daunting experience for me, but she helped me with it. Okay, step by step. So every time I talk to her, she said, you need to improve on this, you need to improve on this, you need to improve on this. And that helped. So take your steps, small steps, step by step. And this is something that I find very necessary. You need to be inspired by stories. Okay, so what I did was actually I talked to people who have done it. People who I know who have actually stepped out from government sector, people who might even have longer periods of spend longer periods in the government than I do. So I actually speak to them. How did they do it? What did they have to do? What are some of the things that they need to improve on in order to step out? It is not just the knowledge. The sheer fact that someone has done it, someone was able to share their experience, that in itself actually gives me confidence that this can be done. Okay, yes. Okay. And this, I think I just want to leave this thought with all of us. The only way to actually truly live is to actually challenge ourselves. I think one of the biggest obstacles that I faced when I was doing this transition was being afraid to actually do something different. Okay, the temptation was always just to stay with the status quo. Just do what I've been doing all this while. Do what I've been comfortable with. Okay. No matter how unhappy I am, no matter how stressful the job is, just stay with it. It's something that I'm comfortable with. Okay. But I will not be really truly living according to what I care about, my family, or according to my values. So the only way to truly live is to actually challenge ourselves. Let's move on. Let's talk about how I overcome some of the issues I have when it comes to the financial commitment aspect. When it comes to cash, okay? One thing I realized, I didn't realize all this all at once. It took me a while to realize that. I realized that actually commitments, the financial commitments that we have, especially when it comes to lifestyle-related commitments, it's actually a pair of golden handcuffs, okay? For example, if I want a car, not only a car, if I want to drive a car of a certain type, maybe a Mercedes-Benz, okay, E180 or something like this, okay, that is a commitment, but it's a commitment that I choose, okay, according to certain lifestyle. Okay, so it's great because I get an ego boost whenever I drive an expensive car, and then I stop at the traffic light and all that. It could feel great, but at the same time, what I'm doing is actually binding myself, okay, in these golden handcuffs. The financial commitment comes from my choice of lifestyle. Okay, if I choose a different lifestyle, then that commitment will change. I'm not saying that this will be the same for everybody, okay, but this is certainly the case for me. If I choose to stay in a condominium, there's financial commitment related to that. If I choose to stay in an HDB flat, okay, I have a different level of financial commitment. Okay, it might not be as prestigious, but at the same time, I will not be bound by this code. Okay, in terms of savings and investment, before that, before I actually started seriously thinking about a career transition, okay, this one Samuel may actually laugh because it's from the industry. But the thing is that when I was thinking about moving, savings and investment became a priority. I began to take it seriously. It was quite a formidable challenge initially because I would look at the amount that I've saved or invested and all that, and it didn't seem like a lot. Okay, but that was when I actually also started to read quite a bit, and this was one of the books that I actually read. This is actually very basic kind of book. But the thing is that it taught me quite a few things about savings and investment. And it is not about having a lot, having high pay all the time. It's actually about the amount of time you spend in the market. And that was actually quite a revelation for me. And that was when I started to think in terms of disciplined investment. And this is tied back to the concept of financial commitment, because the less commitment you have, especially tied to lifestyle, the more you're able to take the money and actually put it into your investment. And the longer time you spend in the market, the more you will be able to accumulate savings through the power of compound interest. Okay, so at the end of the day, I think we have to think in terms of how we want to live. So again, it goes back to the question I have just now. Okay, the thing is, lifestyle is your choice. You have a choice in terms of how you wish to live. Do you want to live a life with a lot of financial commitment, not because that life is one you choose, but because of prestige, or because you believe that, the only way you'll ever be respected is to be able to drive a big car, is to be able to live in condominium or even private property and all that? Is that the way you truly want to live? I realized at the end of the day that no, that is not what is most important to me. At the end of the day, what's most important to me was to be able to spend a bit more time with my son, be able to meet more time with my family, and a couple of other things. I'll share on that later. Okay, so because of that, I realized that because I'm being bound by the golden handcuffs of my financial commitment, my lifestyle, I started to rethink that. Okay, and I really started to cut back on a lot of expenditure. So this was my personal experience. Now, in terms of competencies, okay, I think what I had to do was to think in terms of what are my actual competencies. Okay, it might seem like very obvious point to make, but the thing is, I had not actually thought about what were my actual skill set. Okay, I can say that, oh, I did this before, wow, I coordinated whole government communications, I've advised ministers, I work with permanent secretaries and whatever. But what exactly is that skill set? It took me a while to think through, what exactly am I skilled at? What is it? Okay, it is communications. What kind of communications? Okay, it could be strategic communications. It could be public communications. Okay, but what is it that you do when it comes to public communications? At the end of the day, maybe it is about building confidence in certain things. Okay, in the organization. Okay, so what was I doing? I was actually trying to build confidence. I was trying to build the brand of the government ministries I was with and the government as a whole. And then I realized that actually, what are the gaps that I actually confront? I was thinking that, private sector, do they really have use for a government servant that have been serving for 17 years, 18 years? Is there anything I can offer? So what my gaps? My gap seems to be private sector experience, right? Is that the case? Okay. Is that really the case? Is there a way I can actually bridge from what I know, what I've done, to actually where I want to be? Can I actually cut the gap? Now, what I'm going to say next is that you may not be able to plug the gap immediately. Okay, maybe certain areas you will just not, you feel that the gap could just simply not be filled through this bridging process. Okay, but that might be the case. I will say more about this later. But right now, to begin with, I will encourage you to think through what your actual skill set is, condense them down to the most basic element, identify what people are looking for in the private sector, and apply your skill set, the most basic, fundamental skill set to that. See whether you can actually make the connection, see whether you can actually bridge it. Okay. What about when it comes to gaps? Okay, for me, I identified two areas which I feel that was not strong enough as yet. One was leadership. Okay, it took me a while to admit that, I must say. I was a manager, middle level manager. Okay, I managed teams of people. I lead people in, I manage people in a crisis and all that. But was I truly leading? Okay, that was a question that I had. If I do not have control over how much performance bonus they have, will they still follow what I say? And I do feel that sometimes when dealing with people, I had a difficulty in actually getting them to see my viewpoint or getting them to do what I wanted them to do. Okay. You can manage people, you can force them to do something through the threat of, your evaluation of them at the end of the year. But are you truly leading? Are you truly motivating them to do something? How do I plug this gap then? If I identify that as a gap, how do I plug it? Okay, one big area in which I find a way to plug the gap is through my voluntary work. I actually work in the grassroots level. Okay, I'm a grassroots leader. Okay, so some of the things that I am passionate about is, for example, children with special needs. Okay, this was an event that actually I organized for autistic children. Okay, it was actually an arts event and all that. Okay, so I actually help out in the MP or former MP of my area. Okay, when we go around trying to help needy residents. Okay, I also help to organize events. Okay, for the residents and all that. You can see me here. Okay, I'm the one with the smile, the big gigantic smile. Okay, I suppose I should have taken things a little bit more seriously given that I was seated near to the Prime Minister. Okay, I also am a chairman of the management committee in the CDAC in my area. Okay, so I'm also helping out in the branch of the People's Action Party in Sengkang West as well. Okay, so what I learned from this experience is I thought was a lot more enriching, a lot more educational. than actually just managing people in the structure of the organization. Because when you work with volunteers, they do not have to listen to you. Okay, they don't owe you anything, and in fact, you're dependent on them. And that is where I actually learned true leadership and how to motivate people, how to get people to see a vision, to see an ultimate goal that we need to achieve, and to work together towards it. And I must say, I learned a lot on this. And what I want to encourage all of you to think about is, if you feel that you do not have a skill set at this point in time or currently, do think in terms of seeking opportunities to learn those skill sets outside of your work. And I would say that grassroots work, okay, voluntary work with a VWO, Voluntary Welfare Organization, is both rewarding and also a very good way to learn important skills. There's another area which I was actually quite, I thought I was quite ill-equipped. In the government service back in 2015, 2016, social media was already becoming a major issue. Okay, and the thing is that I was not very familiar with digitalization. Okay, we keep hearing all these big words about digitalization and all that. And for me, in my area, communications, social media, and even traditional media, digitalization is a major development. Okay, it's a major game changer in my industry. So I was not confident about it. Okay, in fact, I was a bit scared about it. I didn't understand what digitalization is, what's analytics, what's social listening and all that. But I realized, so what I did was actually went out, I tried to do more readings, I talked to people. YouTube videos is a very, very good resource. If you don't understand something, watch some YouTube video. That's a good way to begin. And importantly, talk to people in the industry. Okay, people with the latest know-how. They will be able to advise you about the latest trends, the latest concepts, the latest information issues. Think about that. And what I realized about digitalization, I don't know if it's the same concern that you have, but for me, I realized that actually it's a plus, it's a bonus, it's a good thing, because all these tech companies have an incentive to make their apps or the programs as easy to use as possible. Because the easier it is to use, the more likely people are to use it. So like, for example, social media analytics, you can use social bakers to help you to understand how well your social media accounts are performing. You can use Digimind to do social listening. What are the trending topics related to your brand? What are people's sentiments towards your brand? What are they saying about it? Okay, Filmora Go. Okay, I used to think that, wow, doing a video is very, very difficult. But when I learned how to use Filmora Go, and honestly tell you, I learned to use it in one afternoon. Okay, it was actually very straightforward, very easy to actually put together videos. Okay, so once you realize that they have an incentive to make things easy for you, digitalization is no longer this gigantic, scary monster. So for me, this is another area in which I work on to actually improve on myself to fill that competency gap. Okay, but I want to share with you something else that I learned. When it comes to communications about our world, how we actually communicate our competencies, our character, and our commitment, that is something I have to learn too. I was very used to helping brands and big organizations to communicate to their target audiences, but I never thought about how I should do it for myself. And again, it was a big learning process. And again, it's very, very helpful to have a mentor or to have someone to help you along the process, such as, for example, Eileen. Okay. So we are all quite familiar with communicating our competencies, right? We have just gone through this discussion about thinking through about your competencies and all that. But I think not a lot of us think about character and commitment. And that's something that I learned. So initially, when I was looking for a new job, a few years back, okay, I was communicating to organizations, to people who are interviewing me in terms of my competencies, my skill set, and all that. And it didn't quite get through. Then I began to realize that actually I need to actually connect with them not just in terms of what I can do for them, but why am I doing it? Why is this important? It's because this will give people an idea about how you will handle your work. What motivates you? What keeps you going? Okay. More importantly, if there's a big challenge, if something is very, very difficult, if there's a major disaster, there's a difficult project, what will keep you going? What will keep you fighting until you get the job done? Okay. Character. So giving them an understanding of why you're doing something will help you, help your interviewers understand you better. This is Simon Sinek. In case you're not familiar with him, I encourage you to watch this video. Start with the why. It will explain to you the process to think through your why. So what I did was, for example, I shared with the interviewers that my grassroots work about my concerns for people who could not quite help themselves. For example, parents of children with special needs, okay, or needy residents in my area. This is the reason why I'm doing certain things. This is the reason why I feel very strongly that we need to help them. And this is the reason why I bring this dedication to my work. So these are 8 things that you need to communicate as well. Okay, I shall play the video. I'm running a bit short on time already.
Yes.
Commitment. Okay, sorry, Eileen. Okay, I think commitment is something very important. Okay, you want to demonstrate commitment, but how do you demonstrate commitment? You don't demonstrate commitment by rattling off your experiences about things that you have done. You demonstrate your commitment in terms of the challenges that you face, your determination, your creativity in overcoming those challenges, and your learning attitude. The reason why I put this photo here, Hacksaw Ridge, I don't know if you all watched that movie before. It is about this conscientious objector who does not want to kill people. But he was in the Second World War, he still wants to serve his country. So what did he do? He became a medic. And in one night, he saved over 50 of his comrades in arms. Okay, even some of the enemy. Okay, he just carried them from the battlefield, one after the other, after the other. By demonstrating commitment to your job, you allow your potential employer to see you as the asset. The person who not only knows how to get the job done, but will overcome all challenges in order to do so. Okay. Now, I want to move on to one final thing that I've learned. I know I'm spending quite a bit of time on this, but the thing is that we often I think in Singapore, we tend to focus a lot on rationality, a lot on information. But the thing is, very often we make decisions because they feel right. Then after that, we rationalize them. Okay. And I believe that this is the same thing with employers as well, potential employers as well. So this is why it is important not only to think in terms of the mind, but also the heart. Because at the end of the day, what will motivate them to take action? What will actually get them to make the decision is not just information. It's actually that emotional reaction.
Yep.
So we need to figure out how to do that. Okay, Eileen, sorry. Just quick one. What are some of the favorite stories that you can think of? Okay. And I promise you, I'm going somewhere with this.
No worries, no worries. Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep, I've already launched the next one. So if we can, yep. So I think everybody can see on menti.com. The question is, what are some of your favorite stories? Yeah. Your personal favorite stories, is it correct?
Yep, your personal favorite stories, your movies, television, Korean drama.
Yes.
I know my wife likes to watch Korean drama.
we all do. Dots, right? Dots, right? Yeah. So what is your favorite story? Okay. Any favorite story? Just one favorite story that you can think of. I think stories are important. I think okay, someone just type on the chat. Zupodia. Okay. Emily of Paris. Okay.
I don't think I know that one.
So maybe they are okay, menti.com, the code is 862220. Anyway, I think it's fine because we've got a lot of
That's
input in
great.
the
Yeah,
chat,
I'm
right?
seeing that.
Saving,
Tuesday Maury is a good one. Yeah.
yeah, Saving Private Ryan. Gosh, I remember that one. And then
Okay.
Green Mile.
Utopia, yes.
Yep. Okay, Green Mile.
I promise you, I have a point to make about this.
The Intern. Oh.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, that one is good. That one is good. I really like that. Oh, Crash Landing.
Okay.
That's another K-drama. So you got to ask all the fans here, for K-drama fans.
Story of LK, was that such? Oh, okay.
Yes. I
You mean
like
this
that.
picture encounter? All right.
Yeah.
Pay it forward, yes.
Yeah, Pay Forward is a good one. Good movie.
Pursuit of Happiness. I highly recommend that one. And if you are looking for a job, if you're looking for career change, that is a movie that you should watch.
Yeah.
Okay? Because it really discusses a lot about the things that we're thinking.
Yeah.
I think perhaps that we have quite enough, and
Yes.
maybe I will resume.
Yeah, please share. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. When it comes to personal branding, I think it's actually very important to tell your story. Okay, what do I mean? Think in terms of some of the most popular movies, some of the movies that will actually have the highest ratings or won Oscar awards and all that. What do they actually have in common? Okay, think in terms of the Lord of the Rings. Think in terms of Star Wars. Think in terms of Matrix. Okay, for me, I'm I'm also, for me, it's all my cultural references is all these Western movies and all that. Okay, but what am I trying to get at? Even if you take other kind of shows, for example, Korean drama and all that, you always find that there's a way in which the story is told. There's always an introduction. There's always a rising action. There will always be a climax. And then after that, you come down, and then after that, you have a conclusion. Okay. All engaging stories have this format. Okay. What we try to do is we're starting out on a quest. Okay. There will be struggle against challenges. And the hero or the heroine will fight against this struggle, fight against these challenges through their commitment and determination. And finally, there will be a transformation. And then finally, the triumph. Now, what am I trying to get at here? The thing is that this is how brands should communicate their story. This is how brands connect with their audience at an emotional level. If you go out and you say that, oh, I have always been super competent, I'm superhero, nothing ever it challenges me and things like this. But that will make it a very, very boring story. Okay, just think about the superhero movies that doesn't quite work, such as, for example, Captain Marvel. I think that something just seems to be missing from there. Okay, what is missing? What is missing is this element of struggle. Okay. What is missing is the idea of the hero's journey. Okay, in case you're interested in this is a concept that's come out by Joseph Campbell, and it underlines all the stories and all that. But the importance of communicating using a story is to enable people to see not only your competence, what you can do, but why you do it, how you do it. It demonstrates your character, and more importantly, it demonstrates your commitment to overcoming challenges, to overcoming struggle, okay? To always stay on until you finally get it done. Okay? And I think this is what is very often missing from the way we actually communicate our story. So at the end of the day, there are certain ways we need to start thinking in terms of how we actually talk to people. Like, for example, during an interview, don't just tell them, show them. Okay, in what sense? Paint a picture with your words. If you are able to bring a set of slides into your job interview, do that. Okay, have pictures showing what you can do or what you have done. Okay, paint a picture with your words, and try to use active affirmative words and not passive words. Okay, you say, I have done this, instead of saying that, this happened to me. And I think that's very important. You want people to see you as someone who go out and do things and accomplish things and have the commitment and the courage to fight against challenges, things like this. You are not a person where things happen to you. You are a person that went out to make things happen. And I think that says a lot about your brand. And another thing that I think you want to think in terms of, do not be ashamed of your scars. Do not be ashamed of your failures. I think a lot of us were very afraid of that question. So what is one disadvantage that you have, or what's one failure from the past and all that? Do not be afraid of it. Okay, what you need to do is to think of it as challenges, as things that will show your character and commitment. In fact, very often I think that instead of saying that, I accomplished this, maybe on top of that, say what you have failed in, what you have learned, and how you have overcome that failure through your character and through your commitment in order to achieve what you have achieved today. Okay. In fact, I always encourage people to think in terms of, by the way, this is also something I tell the organizations, don't underplay the challenges. Do this. The bigger the dragon, the smaller the sword, the greater the hero. The bigger the challenge that you have to overcome, the less capability you have initially to overcome it, the more you demonstrate your growth, your commitment, and your character. So the greater the challenge, the further you have come without giving up, the more sweat and tears you have put in, the greater you will appear. Do think in terms of this when it comes to it. Okay, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. Okay, this is a statue of David. I don't know if you know, but this was a very innovative way in which Michelangelo depicted David. The way artists before him tend to depict David is at his moment of triumph, when he has cut off the head of Goliath. Michelangelo did it differently, innovatively, creatively. He carved David at the moment he was confronting his challenge. And he put in that determination, that commitment into his sculpture. He chose to depict David at that moment because that is precisely what made David heroic. Because he is small in stature, and yet he's willing to confront Goliath, the giant. Remember that. Be your own hero. So who is Philip Sim? Well, at the end of the day, if I condense everything down to the most basic element, I'm just a storyteller, be it for an organization or brand or for myself. Because I believe that at the end of the day, this is how to connect with your audience at the most emotive level. Okay, just selling a bit of quick koyok. If you're interested in working for Republic Polytechnic, you can actually go to this website. Okay, I think we are still looking for lecturers. And if you are interested to learn a bit more about the use of social media, I'm actually running this course called the Professional Certificate for Social Media Management, okay, where we actually teach you things like, for example, digital marketers essentials, analyzing your social media performance, engaging your audience, basic video creation and editing, storytelling, and leveraging on immersive media. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, Eileen. Oh, sorry, this is not relevant.
No worries.
I apologize.